Russian soldiers who are trying to escape detection by Ukrainian drones, however, become easy targets for the Ukrainian army. The occupiers see invisibility cloaks, but they don't mask the stench. But in fact, they are relieved by the Ukrainian intelligence service, writes the Telegraph. Coats and carpets designed for heat treatment turned out to be not only ineffective, but also unsafe for the wearers themselves. This special clothing can mask the body heat of soldiers, making them less noticeable to thermal imaging cameras and night-use devices. However, the lack of preparation technology and the intensity of preparation of the military personnel resulted in a long-lasting effect. Instead of being visible in the infrared spectrum, the soldiers became black spots on warm aphids, clearly visible to Ukrainian FPV drones. The great colonel of the British Army and the expert with the chemical armour Hamish de Breton-Gordon said, "This is not an invisibility cloak. In fact, due to the contrast, the stench becomes more powerful." Ukrainian forces which detect drones equipped with thermal imaging cameras and targeting systems in real time can easily detect Russian soldiers in the dark. The video, filmed this past year near the Liman, shows how the Russian military, with cloaks against drones, is heading towards the position of the Ukrainian 63rd Mechanized Brigade, after which they are sunk under a barrage of blows from FPV drones. Ridiculous occupiers in the Liman area put on their raincoats against the drones and thought that now the stink is in the air, the brigade commented. The situation with the thermocoils, which other Russian species were fighting, was not very clear. Through the course of instruction, the soldiers cut their ends and heads open, leaving themselves an easy target. There have been bouts of incompetence among Russian personnel who clearly have no understanding of how to exploit their possessions, said Nick Reynolds, a research scientist in the Army Nutrition Department of the Royal Institution Armoury Forces, RUSI. Hamish de Breton-Gordon summed up, "They really stress how important it is to fight on today's battlefield. We need to cover our whole body." For information, Russian versions of masquerade costumes cost only $47. At the same time, Ukrainian troops are wearing more technologically advanced thermal camouflage suits. The smell is about 2.5 kilograms, and the smell is made from rich spherical materials, including polymer fibers, microstructures, and metal threads. Our goal is to camouflage military equipment from the enemy as reliably as possible, Vitaly Polovenko, Deputy Minister of Defense of Ukraine, previously stated.
Russia and Ukraine exchanged hundreds more prisoners Saturday, as part of a major swap that was a moment of cooperation in otherwise failed efforts to reach a ceasefire. According to Associated Press, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky and Russia's defense ministry said each side brought home 307 more soldiers, a day after each released a total of 390 combatants and civilians. Among those who returned today are soldiers from our army, the State Border Service, and the National Guard of Ukraine, Zelensky said on his official Telegram channel. "We expect more to come tomorrow," he added. Russia's defense ministry also said it expected the exchange to be continued, though it did not give details. The news came hours after Kiev came under a large-scale Russian drone and missile attack that left at least 15 people injured, according to local officials. Kyiv and Moscow agreed to swap 1,000 prisoners from each side during talks in Istanbul last week. It was a rare moment of cooperation in otherwise failed efforts to reach a ceasefire in the 3-year-old conflict. Russia and Ukraine began a major prisoner exchange Friday, swapping hundreds of soldiers and civilians in the first phase of an exchange that was a moment of cooperation in otherwise failed efforts to reach a ceasefire in the three-year-old war. According to Associated Press, President Volodymyr Zelensky said the first phase of the exchange brought home 390 Ukrainians, including soldiers and civilians, with further releases expected over the weekend that will make it the largest swap of the war. Russia's defense ministry said it had received the same number from Ukraine. "It's very important to bring everyone home," Zelensky wrote on Telegraph, thanking all who worked to secure their return and pledging to continue diplomatic efforts to make more exchanges possible. Dozens of relatives of prisoners cheered and chanted, "Thank you," as buses carrying the freed captives arrived at a medical facility in Ukraine's Chernihiv region. The men, some with expressionless faces and others unable to contain their emotions, got off the buses wrapped in Ukrainian flags for joyful reunions. Kiev and Moscow agreed in Istanbul last week to the exchange of 1,000 prisoners from each side in their first direct peace talks since the early weeks of Russia's 2022 invasion. That meeting lasted only 2 hours and brought no breakthrough in US-led efforts to stop the fighting. The swap took place at the border with Belarus in northern Ukraine, according to a Ukrainian official who spoke on condition of anonymity because he was not authorized to speak publicly. The exchange, which would be the latest of dozens of swaps since the war began and the biggest involving Ukrainian civilians at one time, didn't herald any halt in fighting. Battles continues along the roughly 1,000-kilometer front line, where tens of thousands of soldiers have been killed, and neither country has relented in its deep strikes.
Мам, привет! Мам, привет! Мам, меня обменяли, мам! Мам, я дома, все, меня обменяли, мам! Мам, меня обменяли, все, я дома! Я живой, со мной все хорошо, мам!